guys today about how to navigate through this pandemic. Like most people say, this is once in a lifetime thing that we're all going through. And what I like to do is just talk about my life and some of the things that I was able to navigate through when times were rough, or when things were going on in my life as I was transitioning from just say high school to college, or making different transitions in my life. I'm 47 years old, went to University of Cal Berkeley. This is 1991 through 1994. I got a chance to play in NBA for about 12 years. I had a 12-year career in NBA, where I was drafted by the Clippers in 1994. And that was a big year for me because, like we said, I got drafted. I was the number 7th overall draft pick. And back then, when I played, leaving college to go into the NBA after your junior year, it was like the kids nowadays that leave, straight out of high school, or they play 1 year at Duke or any other top university, and just, declare for the draft after one season playing college ball. So for us back then, I played with Jason Kidd, who's a Hall of Famer. And he was a year behind me. And when we played at Cal for 2 years together, he was talking about leaving as a sophomore to go into the NBA, and me as a junior. So I know back then he had a couple of offers that he was already talking to a few agents about after his freshman year, because he was the number 1 high school player back then. So, for us, a lot of transitions that happen, in a young age, nothing like what we're dealing with right now with this whole pandemic. But, some things that we talk about here are things that, I've dealt with in terms of not knowing where you're going to go, not knowing what's going to happen, doing different things, to prepare yourself for, the things that you don't know that are going on. So I'll give you a little bit more about my story. Once I left high school and went to University of California, that is a transition in itself, because I'd never been on an airplane before. There was different things that I'd never, grew up doing outside of just playing basketball. So it was a lot of different small transitions that we went through as players, because, we just hone our crafts, and we're always in the gym. We're always thinking about basketball. Like we used to say back then, we used to eat, sleep, and drink basketball, which a lot of kids understand nowadays. Kids that, I've dealt with over the last, 10 years in terms of just training kids, and those kids are picking up different sports at a young age, to where, for us at 8 years old, learned to play basketball for the first time at the Boys and Girls Club without, a lot of trainers and a lot of different people that were there to, be able to teach you the foundation, the fundamentals of the game, which a lot of kids had access to over the last 10 years, that helped fast track a lot of these kids, where they're able to leave, from Duke after a year, or, forego college altogether and just go play overseas, either, in the Euro leagues and all the different professional leagues that exist now that didn't exist back then. So just those different nuances of understanding who you are at that time, and understanding, to a small degree, what you're really bringing to the table as a player, and not understanding that okay, this is basketball, but at the same time, you know, everybody talks about now building a brand. And back then, when we were coming up out of high school, we didn't understand those things. What is a brand? You know, we knew about, you know, Nabisco and Kellogg and all these other, Coca-Cola. You know, we understood those as being brands at the time, and not understanding that, you know, our name and what we were doing in our particular high school at the time was just doing that, building a brand, and people in the surrounding local areas coming out to watch us play at our local high school, you know, and playing in our local leagues, and then therefore, you know, being able to play in bigger venues from there. If you were able to compete for a state championship, now you're, you know, known in the northern California region where I grew up, in Fremont, California. Um, you know, there was a couple of guys, myself, Jason Kidd, Brent Berry, all from that Northern California area who followed behind the Gary Paytons of the world, and those guys that came before us, Brian Shaws, all those guys that, you know, came and they kind of paved the way for the Bay Area players, to where became easier, like we said, to build ourselves as players, and not knowing what that really meant back then at the time, that translated into us becoming household names in the local area, and like we said, that region, and then becoming local players in the state. And then, unlike some other guys, like a Jason Kidd became National Player of the Year, to where his brand at the time was something that, you know, he built into a national name, to where he became the #1 player coming out of high school. And just being able to see how those transitions for us weren't as easy as some people may assume it to be. You know, leaving home for the first time, living in the dorms, just all those small things that you take for granted. You know, having your mom wake you up every day, you know, for school, and now you're on your own, and making those different hurdles and those transitions into, you know, life as a student, full-time student at Cal Berkeley. And, you know, some of the things that you really, really don't understand as an 18, 19-year-old is that just because you dedicated so much time to your craft, that there was other things that were going on in the world. So my first time at University of California, Berkeley, we experienced a riot for People's Park, which was a park that was right there on campus, that at the time was a lot of homeless people that lived in the park, and it was actually right down the street from our dorm room. So just understanding the difficulties that some people were dealing with in their lives as adults at the time, and we're right there on the university campus, just going to school and seeing people in full riot gear, which you see every day on TV right now. You know, as an 18, 19-year-old, you're like, whoa, what is going on? And just, you know, reminiscing back on those times, and seeing how, you know, how life was then, you know, people were fighting for the right just to be able to stay in a park because they didn't have anywhere to live. And this is like 1994, you know, watching, you know, the police come down with their rubber bullets and tear gas, and they're shooting at, you know, at people who are just trying to stand up for their rights, which is something that we see every day on TV right now because of this pandemic. And people don't understand, they don't know what is going on, you know, to some degree. No one knows what the future holds, and it's scary, you know. And so just like for us as student athletes, it was scary at the time to look out the window while we're in study hall and riot police are going down the street, and, you know, next thing you know, the city's on lockdown, and the fires everywhere, and, you know, trash cans and looting's going on. These are some of the things that I dealt with in my first month on campus at University of Cal Berkeley. to where crazy story is, us as kids, we're thinking it's all fun and games, and you see a lot of this going on right now on TV. I'm watching YouTube yesterday, and everybody's rioting for what happened with the person in Minnesota. When things got taken a little too far, and now you see every city's feeling a certain way, and they're trying to let out their frustrations on everything that's gone on over the last few months, in my opinion, on and people just don't understand how fragile life is. And so people are out there doing things that they feel are justified, standing up for rights. And like I said, we had the people stand up for the people in People's Park because they wanted to build condominiums at this particular park, to take up more space, and people, to make more money on housing, for student housing. And they fought for that part. Things happened, and the people came out in the end and won, People's Park back for the people. And so, when those times are going and those things are happening, it's a lot of unrest and a lot of upheaval. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be about what we do as individuals to better ourselves in times when things are uncertain. So for me as a student athlete at that time, just focusing on what I can do, which was manageable at that time, and taking small bites and setting short-term goals. So just coming into summer league and summer school, and what they call the summer bridge program, was just learning the campus and learning and daily, just getting into a routine. And it's very hard, I know, for a lot of you and a lot of people to understand what that means. What does that mean for me right now here at my home in Las Vegas, Nevada? So what that means for us, hey, there's nothing going on that we can be part of. Our daily routine has been disrupted. Right now I do a lot of work with the LA Clippers. So we have a lot of clinics and camps and things that we do. So I would travel back and forth to LA a lot. And then when I was here in Las Vegas, I was training a lot of kids, either at the park, at a local gym, or some of the parents were, more privileged enough to have a gym in their home to where I can come by and then, teach the game that I grew up and that I love, that afforded me opportunities to travel all around the world. And now all those things for me as an individual have been stripped away again, so like we talk about that transition from high school to college, seeing what happened with People's Park, transition from the NBA, from college to the NBA during that summer as a draft pick, same thing. Okay, what's going on? What number am I going to get picked? What can I do to better my opportunity to get chosen, higher in the draft? These are things that at the time, we didn't have personal trainers that were pushing us every day, that we met with. All we had was our agent, and, you really had to go into the gym and put in this work on your own. What does that mean? That means every day, what are the things that I can control? What are the things that I need to work on? At that time for me was, hey, you know what? I need to be in the best shape of my life. I need to be in the best shape. So when I do show up for all these drills and all these things that they're telling me I'm going to have to do, which is pretty much a tryout for all these different teams to better my chances to be a higher draft pick. So that transition from, hey guys, I'm leaving college, I'm going to the NBA, and now what? You have a 3-month window of figuring out what needs to be done. Your agent's telling you, hey, stay in shape. Like I said, back then, it's 1994. We're talking about, 25, 30 years ago, to where now what do? Okay, what can I do as an individual to better my opportunity to stay in that kind of shape? Okay, you know what? Let's talk to some people that have kind of been in this situation before. Let's talk to some former players. My agent had a couple of guys okay, here's some things that you can do on your own to push yourself. To go out here, you need to go get on the track. Back then, we would run, you know, on the track, we would do what they call 400s. I'm not a track star, but those are things that are more, that translate into basketball shape. So, you know, not as long like as a mile run or anything like that, but it was more short burst. Everything was going to be 30 seconds of short bursts with time to rest in between, short bursts with time to rest in between. And, you know, so now we have to go out there and you have to do these things on your own. Nobody's there to push you. Nobody's there. And so you learn these different, you know, ideas of what that means to push yourself. And, you know, you got to really dig within. So I know a lot of you are really right now going, okay, well, hey, you know, there's no school, there's no schedule, there's no, everything's up in the air. And me being 47, like I was telling you before, I've already been through a lot of these transitions before, maybe not to this size or this scale, but it's always come back down to, okay, look within, you know, look within. Let's find out what's the goal. The goal is, hey, this is the goal. Push yourself. Hey, what can I do? Talk to someone that may be a mentor in your life. If you don't have a mentor, you know, with all the different things like we're right now on here doing a webinar, you know, so we have access to people, either even on YouTube where people are talking and you see a lot of celebrities on YouTube and everybody has, you know, different philosophies on what, you know, they do that helps them get through whatever it might be. If it's an actor or actress, hey, they may have long stints of time in between jobs to where they still have to be on point. Same thing for us as players, you know, we still needed to be on point. If it's getting ready for the NBA draft and there's a 3-month window and you have to eat right, you have to get the proper amount of sleep, you have to be in there lifting weights, you have to be in there running on the track, all these different things that, you know, you have to readjust your focus and focus on yourself and things that are going to be able to propel you as an individual. Therefore, you know, you can take advantage of opportunities like this to look within and find out what you're really made of. And, you know, a lot of this stuff is hard because, you know, for us as athletes, you know, growing up, we didn't do as much socializing per se. You know, we're always in the gym, we're missing out on, you know, the Friday night dance, all these different little things. We're all doing a tournament all weekend. You know, we didn't get to go to the beach and hang out with, you know, everyone at the beach. So in certain instances, you're losing out on small things that, you know, people take for granted. And when you're focused on one goal, and that was for us to make it to the as high as level we could, which was the NBA. And thankfully we were able to do that and stay focused enough to do those things. But then you still look back on all the things that you missed out on. So as we're going through this pandemic, you know, some of the things, my son, he's 25 and he just got back from playing over in Greece. So some of these things that we take for granted, you know, he's playing over in Greece in February and March. He's, you know, in a whole nother country, whole nother world. This thing hits, and, you know, me and I'm calling him like, hey, you know, first thing first, I think you need to get back home because all these this stuff is going on. This coronavirus is hitting hard in Italy, which he played the year before in Italy and was in Greece this year. And we saw how hard those countries got hit, you know, with the COVID. And I mean, he barely made it back that weekend before they shut down the borders. And we had got a lot of intel from people that we knew that kind of had an idea of what was going on. And, you know, thankfully we were able to get that word to him and he was able to get home that Friday before all the borders were shut down. And got on the last flight, and you know, he made it back here to Las Vegas. And there's another transition for him as a player, doing well, you know, enjoying life, playing ball overseas. There's 3-4 months left in the season, and then this happens, and he gets hit really hard, and now he comes back, and then now we're here, and you know, first thing they tell him is, hey, when you get home, you have to self-quarantine for 14 days. And we're like, wow. So we're here at the house, self-quarantine, you know, because he had to come through Europe. He had to come through London, Heathrow, and then all the way to San Francisco. So he's on a plane for, you know, 2 days in a small cabin with who knows what's going on with, you know, how contagious this thing is at that time. And, you know, thankfully when he got back home and he self-quarantined and he got checked out, everything was just fine. But, you know, just looking at him and making that transition and not knowing what's going on and coming back home and being here, and then us being here at the house, and then everything's locked down. What can we draw upon, you know, from our previous and our past experiences to somewhat stay sane, you know, because as people know, you know, just not being able to have, you know, that camaraderie with your family, your friends. You know, we were living in a time when socially everything was, you know, at its peak. You know, every bar was packed. You go down the street, every grocery store, you know, just the social environment at the time was, you know, something that, you know, had built up over years of people being able to just, I'm out here in Las Vegas, and I mean, the casinos, it was that time of the year when I've been out here about 2 years, where we knew March Madness is right around the corner. Everybody's gearing up for all these things. And, you know, now everybody's got to stay in home and nobody can go out. You know, what's going on? What do we do? And the first thing that we were able to draw upon was like, hey, we've been here before. Hey, we've been through in situations similar to this. What can we do? And the first thing we did as athletes, as a former athlete and him as an athlete, current athlete, we thought about, hey, you know what? If we have a sound body that's going to help calm us down in our nerves and our minds, what can we do right here in a small space? Number one, to kind of be on some kind of schedule and, you know, work out or do push-ups or do anything, you know, to get that, you know, physical activity that we're so used to doing and getting, and therefore that being our baseline, our foundation of, you know, how we're going to proceed out of this thing. You know, it was very tough. I mean, we were in the backyard with 5-gallon drums of water, you know, just lifting them and, you know, running in place and finding different ways of being able to be active without being social. When we're used to playing basketball 3, 4, 5 times out the week, you know, with all the guys, and just missing out on all that social interactions with guys. So it's very, very, you know, one of those things that, you know, you really had to draw on. But I think that foundation for us as athletes is just, hey, let's just be active. Let's get up. Let's get a routine going and then proceed from there. So, you know, for me as a player, and coming from a background of players and talking to a lot of guys that used to play and guys that are currently playing, these are just some of the things that we find in the advent of Zoom, where we can have these kind of talks where, you know, some of our buddies, where we get on a Zoom meeting and, you know, smoke some cigars and kind of talk out what's really going on in the world and how we can navigate through these times. So, you know, that's a little bit about my story. You know, I did a lot of talking right now, but I also wanted to have opportunity to, you know, answer any questions that you guys might have. I saw someone posted something on the chat. I don't know exactly what you guys might want to talk about, but if you have any questions on, you know, some of the things that you know, that you found that can be helpful for everybody with during this pandemic, that, you know, and different transitions that people have gone through, things that you've gone through, to kind of help you get through these times. You know, I know a lot of you are maybe student athletes. Some of you may be, you know, everyday workers who are just looking for, hey, you know, I'm just so used to being here. I'm so used to being able to go clock in and do my job and then come home and have a schedule and feed my family. And now all these things have been stripped away from me, you know, and, you know, anything I can do, you know, to kind of help you guys navigate through that, because, you know, so much of what we do as athletes, especially if we playing, you know, we're playing ball, there's so many different transitions when you don't know. But all we can do is, like we say, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So, you know, that was one thing that we always kind of try to live by, was let's stay ready so we don't have to get ready, you know, when opportunities arise or things somewhat get back to normal. So if anybody has any questions for me, you know, you can unmute it and ask a question.
Hi, Lamond. This is Jim Bowman. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good, Jim.
Good. I just posted a question. I'm really curious, Lamond, if we take a look at what the culture of basketball was, you know, in the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s for a player coming into the league versus maybe some of the things you see today with some of the young players coming into the league today, since you're also working with new players today. How's the culture changed for the NBA, you know, for a new player coming in?
Oh, I mean, the culture for guys that are coming into the NBA, guys that just in general that are coming in and playing, you know, so much better than when we came into the NBA. Like I said, it's, you know, there's so much help. There's so many people that are there to help the guys that are coming into the league today on small things like the proper nutrition. You know, when we were playing and we just eat whatever, you know, we stopped by McDonald's on our way to practice and after practice. You know, now, well, later on in my career, when I was with the Toronto Raptors in 2003, you know, we started having a chef that was in there cooking breakfast for us, and then we'd have lunch after practice. And just having the proper, you know, nutrition was a big thing for us, outside of, you know, getting individual trainers that traveled with us. That never happened. It was just, you know, our trainer that, you know, was with that one group, our whole team, and he would be our go-to for everything. You know, now guys have so much different access. I think they really understand that they are a brand. You know, they are a small business, and to be a small business, you need to hire people that are going to help you in all the small things to help run your business more efficiently and more effectively. And guys are really understanding that now. And, you know, you can look at a guy like a LeBron James, and you can see how much money he spends just on his body, $2 million a year just on having the right people, you know, teach him what movements that are going to be good for him at a particular age that he's at. That way he can still be out there performing at the optimal level that he's performing at. You know, that's part of what we talk about. Hey, how things have changed for guys, you know, in 1994. Back then, if you had an ACL tear, you know, you're going to miss the whole year. Now you have guys that tear ACL and they're back within 3 months. You know, Achilles tear was like, you know, your career is over. And now a guy comes back after a year. So just the different nuances on how people have come on board as well, and how guys have understood that, you know, it's going to take more than just me and my immediate family. Me and my immediate family, and that's all we had back then. Me, my immediate family, and my agent to navigate through this whole thing. Okay, I got another question on the chat. Let's see. Thank you for your time doing this. I coach cheerleading and gymnastics, and I am trying to find more ways to be creative and keep my students engaged, as well as build the brand and attract future students. So far, I have been doing a lot with social media, as well as reaching out to facilities to see if I can bring the program to them once we're good to go back to gyms and recreation facilities. Any suggestions? Okay. Any suggestions on how to keep your students? This is for Emily. Emily, yeah, you know, this is a hard one because there's still those question marks from parents, you know, on what am I going to do with my kids? Are they going to be able to go back to school? You know, are they going to be, I don't know if I even want them around other kids because of all these different, you know, 6-foot rules and all these different things. So in my opinion, is first we've got to see, you know, if that's even a possibility of people even being able to get back to sports. A lot of the kids that I was training, you know, in February, you know, they're not even thinking about sports or extracurricular activities. They're just more focused on, you know, what, you know, school is going to look like. And right now it seems like everybody's doing school online. And, you know, I think once we get back to somewhat normal activities, you know, like you said, things are going to change in terms of what you can do to really reach more kids and keep them more energetic and active and wanting to be part of whatever sport it is. If it's gymnastics, or if it's basketball, if it's baseball, you know, I really believe that we will get back to some norm. Some of the things that I've done in the past to really help you know, draw more kids in is always cross training, you know, doing other things that cross over with gymnastics or cross over with basketball that makes it more of an inclusive thing. You know, the more value you bring to your particular business is more about being different from, you know, other gymnastic or other gyms. So for example, when I had my basketball program, some of the things that we try to do that were a little bit different at the time was, you know, we would be able to do small tours, you know, whatever that means. There's a lot of different facilities like the G League for us. They would give us free tickets to be able to bring our kids in. So we would combine all those things into the package. Like, hey, we're going to have this day here. We're going to do things outside of just whatever sport that they're training for. So I think it's always about, you know, crossing over those activities for the parents as well as the kids to where it becomes more of a social thing, more so than just being a grinding activity just with your particular sport. So instead of everybody just being, you know, locked in on, okay, how are we going to become NBA superstars, and it being more of a, hey, how we become better people, you know, that sells and a lot more kids. And it takes a lot of the pressure off of those kids that are trying to participate in that sport. And, you know, not everybody's going to make it there and everybody's going to be able to perform it well. So it's always about having, you know, things that kind of cross over with that sport and it becomes more of a, you know, a social activity. And I think that goes a long way. Let's see if I can answer some more questions on the chat. I'm going to get back to this chat. Let's see. You're welcome, Emily. Let's see. I think I missed a couple. Your thoughts on return to sports during this. What are my thoughts, Alan? My thoughts on returning back to the sport. You know, it's tough. You know, what is it going to really look like, you know, for the NBA, for the NFL? You know, people are still buying season tickets for the the Oakland Raiders that have transitioned to Las Vegas now. So a lot of people are looking at, you know, things going back to normal, but what does that mean? So it's very, very tough. I mean, I think with anything is going to always come back down to the testing and knowing who's contagious and knowing who, all these different things that are going to come about. And it's just tough. It's just hard. Like we said, we've never really been here, never seen anything like this. It was always one of those things that I heard as a player was like, no matter what's going on, sports is always going to be here no matter what. When the NBA shut down, it was like, whoa, time out. This thing is really serious. And all the other sports, Major League Baseball shut down. Oh, this is really, really serious, because you always look at, these activities like baseball, like basketball on a professional level is always about entertaining and getting people's minds off of, stress from work and other things that are going on within the world. So, that still has yet to be seen. I see the NBA is talking about going to, Disney World out in Orlando, Florida, and starting the season back up in July after a couple of weeks of training camp, and then kind of getting the season started back up, which, I can commend them on that, just being able to be thoughtful and get some kind of remnants of, what sports used to be. So we'll just see what happens. I mean, that's all I can say. It's really tough. See, I have some more questions, I think. Let's see. See if I can figure out how to get back to the chat. To answer some more questions. Okay, got another question from Alan. How would I feel about playing in empty arenas? Hey, Sylvain, good to see you. Hi, Sylvain, I haven't seen you in a long time. Yeah, how would I feel about playing empty arenas? I mean, you love the game of basketball, but you always do it for your fans. I mean, you get the energy from the fans, when they're cheering you or even when they're booing you, you get, we would say we get chill bumps. Every time you hit a shot, you can hear 20,000 people, breathing almost. And we'd hit a shot in an opposing team's arena, you'll hear, ooh, you hear, ah, and that keeps you going. That gets you excited. So just playing an empty arena, that'd be like, playing in practice. So I have a question from Helen Joseph. I'm not able to play sports because of several life difficulties. I'm disappointed about that. I can play intramural sports in college. How do I transition to intramural sports? The seriousness and success is not the same. Yeah, great question. Intramural sports on a college campus, we had a couple of guys like on all college campuses. They allow a tryout process. So even everybody that played intramurals or, wanted to play at the University of Cal Berkeley, they gave everybody opportunity to show up and do a tryout. That's for every campus in college. So I would say, I don't know what the difficulties are that you're going through, but I always looked at basketball as a life sport, if you could think of it like that. Even after I got done playing, I played 12 years in NBA. I also played overseas for 3-4 years, but I play for free. I play intramurals. I play at the men's leagues down the street. I play at Lifetime Fitness. And so it becomes part of you. So I know that the sport has been taken away from you for whatever the reason. And I think that's a great, great thing that you're going to be able to participate in the sport, even if it's intramurals, because you just don't understand how big of a relief that is to be able to just participate in a sport, get your mind off of your studies, get your mind off any problems that are going on in your life. That was the whole reason why I even played basketball. Was I had a lot of difficulties in my life with my You know, when I grew up with my dad in the abusive situation that he was dealing with my mom. And so I always looked at basketball as my escape. That's my safe haven. So if you could look at the sport and transition your thought process on looking at it like that, I think that can have big, big things for you in your future in whatever you do, as long as you're able to still compete in the sport that you love. That's what I always did. No worries. Thank you, Alan. And thank you, Helen, for your questions. I have a question from Randall, if Randall's still on. My fear is NBA playing on top of the NFL late in the year. Your thoughts? Yeah, what we consider basketball is always going to be year round. It has become more and more year round. You can see what the NBA has been doing. I mean, the break that the guys get is a lot shorter than it used to be. We would get a solid 3 months, because at the time I played the Clippers, we never went to the playoffs at the time. So we would get a solid 3 months off, and our season really didn't start until November. Now the season for these guys is starting, September almost, beginning of October, doing tours overseas. So, I think basketball is one of those sports that can overlap with, football. And, I think the TV gigs and stuff that they have, they'll figure out how to really, make sure that football gets its time, like it does every year. And then once football is over, we'll obviously see, how far they can be able to push the season out. Because, even out here during the summer, it was like, the summer league was big. The summer league was big, and, so basketball was year round anyway. So I have a question from Vern. What's up, Lamond? Took a class, SDUS, 10 years ago. Sean, you and me went out later that night. Yep, I remember. The tennis coach, that's right. Thank you. Thanks, Vern. Good to hear from you. I got a question from SDUS. Sports sounds like your outlet for stress. How does sports help you, the physical part or the teamwork or both? Sports helped me out tremendously. That's why I still play to this day at 47. I'm blessed to be able to, my knees are still good, my hips, my back is still good. So I'm still able to go out and participate in my sport, 2 or 3 times a week before the pandemic. But, even to this day, I have so many different little workouts that I would do on my own where I can go to a court and I can just run lines. And, it becomes one of those things that, like I said, becomes the foundation, of my life, as I transition to other things outside of basketball where I'm training or we're doing clinics and we're doing camps in the summer, even to where I would get up early in the morning. I would just go to a court, shoot, run lines if I couldn't play 5-on-5. So for me, that court and just being in the gym has always been a thing where it becomes meditative, so you go in, sometimes I would just sit there, and I've been in the gym so many years, it becomes one of those things you can sit in the gym and just meditate and refocus on what's really going on in your life. And, I always looked at it like that, and I always look at it like that till this day. I go out to outdoor court around the corner since we can't go in any gyms, and, me and my son, we'll run up and down the court, run some lines. We'll do some basketball, conditioning workouts, just to get our minds off of what's going on with the pandemic, and, you know, to stay focused and to stay in that cardiovascular health, and, you know, just to stay, number one, mentally, you know, in it, you know, in the moment. That helps me stay in the moment. People always talk about that flow state. And, you know, the biggest thing is for me is like, hey, it's a new day. Let's be in the moment. Let's feel what it's like to be alive. And I'm going to run, you know, some 626s. We're going to run. My son does one. We do a 2-minute drill. We just run from one end of the court to the other end of the court, you know, for 2 minutes. And just getting that mental mind state of challenging yourself and creating that foundation helps you tackle everything else that's going on, you know, in life. And those things never change, you know. And like I told him, you know, every, you know, other day we find a way to be able to be active and be in the moment, you know. So that's the mindset. Let's be in the moment. Let's not go back, you know, too far in time and think about what happened last week. Let's just say, hey, we're here, we're alive, we're here right now, we're together, we're healthy. Let's be in the moment. Let's just be here right now and focus on, you know, getting through this next 2 minutes. You know, let's get through this heat. You know, out here it's 110 degrees. So we're out there trying to get our workout in early in the morning. It's still like 80, 90 degrees, you know, 6 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, let's persevere through these small challenges. Therefore, we can take on the bigger challenges of life as life comes, and we can stay calm at the same time and not really be in a panic mode, and really understand what's coming, and understand also that, hey, we persevered through lots and lots of things before, and we'll get through this. And that's the mindset. And basketball and meditating and being in that moment is the biggest thing. So the question was, what other things have kept me motivated? The motivation, you know, for me is always, you know, what kind of example am I setting, you know, for, say, my son who's 25, say my grandson who's 3, you know, what kind of example am I setting? That's kind of how I live my life. Like, you know, there's those people that consider themselves leaders, but they don't really like talking about it. So what can I do and how I live my life every day that's going to translate to, you know, my kids and my family members and my loved ones, to where they can look at me and go, well, you know what, everything that he's been through, you know, even if he was getting drafted number 7 overall pick, or, you know, career is over and he's trying to figure out what to do next, you know, he still, you know, stayed even keel. He didn't get too high and he didn't get too low. And I think those are the things and lessons that we learn from being players. You know, there's 82 games in a season. You know, if I got really, really low after, you know, a game on a Friday night, that's going to affect me on Sunday, you know. So you learn through all the challenges that you go through, you know, as a player. And, you know, okay, just because we beat the champs, you know, on Friday, and then we have a game on Saturday, a back-to-back, we have to put that in our rear view, you know, and continue on and understand that, you know, that's part of it. Not getting too high, not getting too low, and keeping that frame of mind becomes way more effective, and it rejuvenates you. You have to wake up and be rejuvenated. I have a question from Randall. As a former player, did you react to the Kobe tragedy, and how long before you felt more normal again? As a former player, me playing against Kobe, me seeing Kobe come into the gym. We used to play at the men's gym at UCLA, which a lot of people know about now because of YouTube and social media. And now you're able to see all those guys playing ball on those three courts that we played ball on, and in the 90s, and Magic and those guys played on that court in the late 80s. So it was always a tradition going to UCLA's men's gym. And I remember the day when I saw Kobe come in with his backpack, right after he got drafted to the Lakers, and he was taking classes, at UCLA, and then coming in and getting some more work in. And now you all are able to see, how much that he put into his craft and his mindset, even at 18 years old, was, something that we look back on now. And, for us as former players that played against, for me, I played against a lot of those guys. I played against Michael, which we saw, everything that he's done in his career, and then they magnified that with The Last Dance. You see, the tragedy that happened with Kobe, and then them being able to, go back into his career and his life, and, kind of see the things that he was able to do as a person, number one, for both of them, Michael and Kobe. It always starts, with their energy and what they're bringing to the table as individuals that translated into their game, that translated onto the floor, to where they became bigger than life. I think even without basketball, those two people like Kobe and Magic and Michael, those people are special in general without even picking up a basketball, because of their outlook on life and their mindset and how they attack life. And, like Michael was saying in The Last Dance, is just, keeping that motivation and looking 10 years down the line or 5 years down the line and saying, hey, this is where I see myself, and this is where I see my game or my life, here, and, trying to move in that direction, and being positive and attacking it aggressively every day is something that you can take and look back on. But, it was really sad to watch what happened with, Kobe. And I really truly believe that he was gone at a young age, at a young time. And, it's just life, and it's just hard, but, we all have to keep pushing through. And then, we all look up now, and now we're going through, our own life or death struggles with the pandemic. And, it's just always about being able to look back at people like Kobe, look at people like Michael, and take inspiration from that, and understand their mindset and how they move through life, and trying to adopt some of those tools to do the same thing. We got a couple more minutes. We can do one or two more questions. And I just want to say thank you all, for joining in on the webinar. And we're going to do it again next weekend. And for those that want to join again next weekend, I'll be here. So we have time for one or two more questions, and then we can see if we can join back next weekend and come with some more questions to kind of help everybody move on. Yeah, last question. Did I enjoy The Last Dance? Yes, I did. I really enjoyed The Last Dance. The great thing about The Last Dance was I was in it. So that was fun to be able to see yourself in that documentary. I think it was like episode 3 when Michael came to LA and played us at the sports arena. So that was a great time to be able to reminisce on, you know, when they did come. And the funny thing is we had those guys beat that game. And you know, like I think if you watch Last Dance, you'll see that they were coming in on a losing streak, and then they came in to play us. We started the game off fantastic, and I think they played that game on YouTube. And funny thing is, they had Michael Jordan with 49 points, and then they had my name on there, Murray, and I had like 24 that game. I had a great game that game. But yeah, I always reminisce on that because I could have been one of the teams that we beat, you know, when they went on to win 73 games that year. So, you know, we missed that opportunity on a simple inbounds play, but oh well. So I did enjoy it. Thank you all for joining me on my webinar. Like I said, I'll be back on next Saturday. If we have any more questions, you know, like we said during this our time here, you know, just like we said, just focus on today. Focus on, you know, things that you possibly can do to create that great base and that foundation for yourself as we move on. And, you know, everybody have a good weekend. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.